Hi everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to Lobby Talks by Otolo. My name's James Lemon, your host, and I'm the founder of Otolo. Lobby Talks is really set up to showcase careers and functions across this diverse hospitality industry and celebrate some of the leaders and mentors within it, what they've got to share about their journeys and give back on the roller coaster ride that is any career in hospitality. Really excited about our guest today. We're going to be exploring the finance function and demystifying a little bit of what goes on in head office. So my guest today is Matt Woollard of IHG. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hi, James. Nice to see you.
Great to have you here. Great to have you here. I suppose the secret should be we know each other really well. And actually, Matt and I, I shouldn't pretend like you're a stranger, that we're just being really formal. Matt and I probably met about 13 years ago working at IHG, and have definitely made sure we've stayed in touch and seen the inside of a good number of London pubs over the last few years. But fab to have you here. Matt, I know we're kind of working in home offices, but for the sake of Lobby Talks, we're not. We're meeting in a lobby of your choice somewhere in the world. So where are we meeting today?
Cool. So I have picked it's obviously got to be an IHG hotel, the Intercontinental Da Nang in Vietnam as my favorite lobby. There's a few reasons for that. One, Vietnam, the country, I absolutely loved when I went there. I think both the culture and particularly the food is amazing there. And both my wife and I, when we traveled around, we love sort of new food, and Vietnam offers a great selection. This hotel is also probably the poshest hotel I've ever stayed in, which immediately makes it
is that hard for you, Matt, a posh hotel?
Yeah, likely to be a favorite. I also have my best kind of guest experience ever in a hotel in this property, which at the time was sort of a bit frustrating, but I look back on with fondness. So at about 9-10 o'clock, we went to our mini bar and we just went to chocolate bar. And I think my wife particularly wanted a Kit Kat, and they were out of stock. So I kind of went through to reception and said, "Oh, could you bring one down?" Assuming they'd have some out the back. The hotel had only just opened, so the team were obviously very new. We went then back to our room, and kind of an hour or two passed, nothing turned up. So we sort of just gave up and went to sleep. Then about 2 a.m. in the morning, the doorbell on the room sort of rang, and a guy was there, and he was so proud, and he was like, "I've got the Kit Kat." And they obviously didn't have one in the hotel, and they sent some guy off like 100 miles around Vietnam to find a Kit Kat. And they had no sort of comprehension that 2 a.m. may not be the right time to deliver it. So they went above and beyond, maybe not quite understanding.
I love that.
Really
Mixed service. No, a midnight feast at least, and I'm sure they were well stocked for the next day when the craving came back. Brilliant. Well, look, let's snap open a Kit Kat. Let's grab a beer and have a good chat. So look, our first section, Matt, is career in 60 seconds. And I'll be honest, most people do not manage to highlight their career in 60 seconds. But do you feel up for the challenge?
Yep, I feel up for the challenge. I'll give it a go. Maybe I'll be under. We'll see. So I started my career at Deloitte and qualified as an accountant there before joining IHG. I've now been at IHG about 11 years. And within my time at IHG, I've worked across a ton of roles. So I've worked in financial planning analysis at a group and a regional level. I've worked in commercial teams at a regional level, so completely outside of finance. I've worked in investor relations, so interacting with shareholders and analysts across banks. I've worked back across commercial finance again. More recently, I've worked in finance operations, so more day-to-day with hotels, and that's actually where I learned the most about day-to-day operations. And then now I'm in a role which is head of group FP&A at IHG and also competitor intelligence.
Fantastic. Yeah, you did pretty well there, actually. Better than most, I'd say. Better than most. And I'm going to ask you, what's the secret to changing roles like that in a head office? Is that, do you get handpicked? Do you just put your hand up for it? Do you request, how does that process work for people who are sitting in function thinking, wow, I'd love to kind of see that much of the business?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably two things. The first thing is, and I'd give this piece of advice sort of regardless if you're looking to move role, is it's just really important to show initiative and show interest in different areas. And ultimately, if you do that, what I've always found is you end up kind of veering outside of your swim lane and you start talking to people in other departments, you get to know other areas. And then when opportunities come up, then you're more front of their mind. So kind of one thing is, just don't be afraid to kind of ask questions and go outside of what may be your expert area. The second thing is that I guess I've always taken the view that nothing's that complicated. And if you apply yourself and put the effort in, we can all do each other's roles, to the extent that someone from HR, I'm sure, could do most finance roles, and the same the other way around. There's only certain roles that are very technical, tax and so on. Once you go beyond that, it's just all about working with people and thinking practically.
Yeah, I love that perspective. I was at an event yesterday and someone was saying every hotel company needs a technical specialist that just researches what tech solutions there are. I was like, I don't think that's true. You should just let everyone in every team do their own research on what would help them do a better job, right? These things, we need to demystify areas like finance probably and technology, right? You don't have to train for years to know that there's technology that's innovative out there, and you could go and chat to those guys and see how it could help your business. So love that. Love that. Good stuff. Look, we're all about experiencing kind of hospitality careers and hearing about people's highs and lows. So our next section is called Good Day, Bad Day. Now, I'll let you decide which one you want to do first, but I definitely want to hear. We haven't had a finance person before, so I'm intrigued as to the highs and lows of a finance career. But yeah, take it away. Where do you want to start?
I'll do my bad day first so that I can finish on a high. And actually, probably to your annoyance, the example I've chosen for my bad days is from when I worked in the commercial team. So it's maybe less of a finance example, but it's certainly an example of sort of, I suppose, the corporate office life. So this takes me back to 2014, and I guess the early days of digital or mobile check-in in hotels. And I was working in the Europe commercial team, and I had been assigned to lead the project from a regional perspective on getting digital check-in into our hotels across the patch. And fairly early on into that, I had to make a call as to whether we would choose to have mobile check-in at one of our hotels. And that hotel was very important because it would be the one to host our regional conference later in the year that would have kind of 1,000 attendees from all the IHG kind of top brass through to different owners and so on. And I thought, well, let's not hold back. Let's go bold, and let's say we can do this, and let's commit to it. I did have a plan B in my back pocket, but the plan B wasn't great. And I remember we sort of worked through the project. As I got more into it, I started to worry a bit. I'm not 100% sure this was a good decision, but I felt like there was always, a good possibility we could get it to work, and we plowed on. And then it got to a point where I think we were probably about 3 or 4 weeks out from the conference. And it was kind of, you need to make the decision by the end of today as to whether you want to go down this route or not, because people need to start checking in. And so we had the test day. So I had a team in the States who were doing the tech in the background. We obviously had the team at the hotel who would receive the reservation. And then there was me essentially just walking around our office in Denham, sort of texting, going, can I now try and book it? And I blew the whole day, and I must have tried to book through this sort of digital check-in proof of concept about 140 times. Just went back and forth, and needless to say, none of them worked. And sort of even more upsettingly, a few times it kind of felt like it had worked, and there would be sort of a 10-minute lag, and they'd be like, no, it still hasn't worked. So we went through all this, and then we finally got to the end of the day, and in the end, we just had to go to plan B, and it didn't work out. So it was incredibly frustrating, and it was just one of those things that I felt like we could have had a massive impact. But as ever, technology is complicated, and it was a long time ago. I learned a lot through that experience. I'd probably still do the same again, because I think you do have to sort of challenge yourself and push these things. But ultimately, I don't know. I've never spent a day of work 10 hours just on my phone, just constantly clicking the same three buttons.
You must have felt absolutely powerless as well, right? It wasn't even like you could just dive in and press some buttons differently. You just had to trust that process. Well, I guess programs don't always go right. What would you have done differently? For people who are out there leading programs, remote teams, innovation, these are all really common themes for the industry right now. Doesn't always run smooth, but what would you have done differently, do you think, that may have had a different outcome?
Yeah, I think, to an extent, I'd probably let it run a bit too long before sort of almost doing the testing phase. It was almost like a do or die testing phase. And I kind of because I'm obviously not a technology expert, I never knew quite what was going on in the background. And in hindsight, we probably could have done more partial testing along the way to get a sense of where we were going to. Also, as well, I mean, I sort of stand by my point of, you've got to challenge yourself, but maybe we would have been better off kind of going, we need to challenge ourselves on kind of deadline and delivering the technology, but to offset how much of a technical challenge it is, let's go with a smaller hotel that's maybe got a simpler setup rather than one of our biggest properties in the region that had a lot riding on it. So yes, I do definitely look back on that, and I have learned some things that I apply day to day ever since.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah, exactly. Like, and all that extra pressure to know it has to go well in front of 1,000 of your colleagues as well. Whereas if you just grabbed the small hotel down in London, you could have popped in, checked that the 30 guests checking in that day that it worked. But yeah, probably put pressure on your shoulder there. But look, you've got to go big or go home, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Good stuff. All right, and then let's lighten the mood. Take us through one of your best days.
Yeah, so one of my best days, more recent. So in my Europe finance ops role, and this probably does give a bit of an insight to people who work in hotels and interact with those in corporate roles, I suppose, how much pressure we feel in terms of needing to kind of motivate teams and make sure everybody's happy. So this day was when I hosted the Europe Hotel Finance Conference for my team. So to give you context, in my previous role, I headed up all of the directors of finance in our hotels across Europe for our managed properties, which is about 70 to 75 people, along with corporate teams. We have this annual conference. It's quite a big day, and obviously wanted to go well. I don't have any experience of kind of running events. Obviously, I had a support team, but ultimately it was kind of my day to organise. I had a couple of sort of big plenary sessions. I had been key to kind of setting up the more interactive sessions and what we had running through the day. And ultimately, you go into it super worried that everyone's just going to turn up and think this is rubbish and boring. And you're very, very conscious of that. And as we went into the day, I was still relatively new in role and I didn't know a lot of people that well. And I hadn't worked with hotels that closely before. So I was very conscious of making a good impression with everyone. But the day itself, it ran pretty smoothly. I was very pleased with that. So that made me happy. But ultimately, I knew the key to the success of the event was really the evening. That's where everyone actually tends to remember these things and the socialization. And to say that I don't have experience of, running events is an understatement when it comes to running evening events.
Right.
I can't even enjoy evening events that easily. I don't like dance or anything. So when it comes to kind of like generating a good vibe, that was always going to be a massive challenge for me. And I can remember being so worried by the fact that, at these evening events, you do awards and so on. I'd be fine with that. Don't mind public speaking. Dinner would finish and then people go to the dance floor. And I was like, I'm a very reserved British person.
100 finance people on the dance floor.
Yeah, well, you jest, but when it's a European team, bear in mind, that the Brits dance less than most people from Europe, and we dance worse as well. So we finished dinner, and my big concern was loads of people are going to go to the dance floor, which they did. And as the person who's kind of leading this conference, I'm going to have to go because it's important.
Did you feel like you needed to do like a first dance, Matt? Was it like, actually, I probably...
I felt like I had to go at first, and then I also felt like I had to stay all night. So we spent all night on this dance floor. I mean, I just can't dance, and I feel so uncomfortable. I tried to drink a bit to kind of numb the pain, I suppose. And a few people even said to me whilst I was on the dance floor, like, it's really impressive that, you're dancing all night. And from that, you can tell they're basically saying, it's really impressive, terrible at dancing, but you're still doing it.
Yeah. It looks painful, Matt. It looks like it really hurts you. So I have heard that being the boss of these events, actually, sometimes that's an excuse to slip away. I have heard that you kind of, you say your thank yous, you have a little chat with everyone, and then you quietly disappear because actually everyone's like, why is the boss still here? So maybe next time that happens, you can be like, when it comes to the dancing and socializing, I'll buy one more round, and then actually I'm going to go and go do something else.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
you're saying this is your best day. You're saying your best day is when you force yourself on the dance floor and had a few drinks.
Well, I feel like it was my best day just because kind of, I suppose, the feedback I got afterwards and actually just the way the whole day went, and it was incredibly rewarding to just see so many people who kind of felt so engaged with the day and ultimately seemed very happy, and it felt like it had gone very well. And it's one of those things I would say, a lot of the things that I do in my day to day, I'm experienced in, and I kind of feel fairly confident. This was a thing that if I'm being honest, had relatively low confidence going in. And so for it to go well was very rewarding. And ultimately as well, we're humans, and the things that make you happiest are when you see other humans that are happy, right? And you have that impact on people. And that was one of the days where I felt like I'd had a big impact on a lot of people, which was just a very nice feeling. And I could go home to my wife and say, I haven't got to dance again this year because I've used it up in one night.
I'm sure she'd be incredibly grateful for. She owes IHG a big favour. And do you think there's a piece of it as well that when you try something new and you go well out of your comfort zone, that's often quite interesting, isn't it? Because it's so different from the day-to-day. Just the world of event management, suddenly like, oh, it's actually quite different to my monthly reviews, my forecasting.
Yeah, I mean, and everything is, to an extent, once you do stuff that's outside your comfort zone your day to day, you're sort of opening yourself up to either have, your sort of best or worst day, right? It's a bit of a risk, and it could go wrong, but you're never going to have your best day just doing what you normally do. Right? It's never going to stand out. So I'm a big believer that, you need to step outside your comfort zone and try different things, and people respect that as well. Often when you do things like this, you worry, what will people think? The reality is, the vast majority of people want you to succeed. And the vast majority of people know this type of stuff is difficult. Like, nobody's sat there going, oh, it's super easy to stand up in front of a bunch of people and talk for an hour. People know it's not that easy, and they want you to do well. And I think that's just always an important thing to bear in mind when you're presenting or doing these big events. Everyone wants to enjoy themselves, and it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. Love that. No, I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Cool. So look, next section is called Last Day on Earth, and we definitely don't want to make the mood more morbid. And you've already excelled yourself with this amazing lobby that you've picked for us. But we ask everyone to share, what would be the last hotel you stayed in? What would be the last restaurant or place you'd eat at? What would be the last event you'd attend? So maybe you could walk us through, what does your last day on Earth look like, Matt?
Yeah, so I've got my details. There's a few sort of additional requirements like that added in for it to work. So hotel wise, so I haven't played much in the last couple of years because I've got kids, but I love a round of golf. I really like a golf holiday. So for my hotel, I've picked a good old links hotel in Ireland, so Portmarnock, on a beautiful links golf course by the sea. Now, the big sort of criteria that I've got for this to actually work is the weather's got to be excellent, which I know is a big
one day in every 10 years.
Yeah. But, you said I could pick my ideal option. So I've got glorious weather in Ireland, golfing holiday on a links course, room overlooking the course and the sea, and just a couple of days playing a few rounds with my friends and family there for after. They don't like to play golf with me. And then in terms of kind of the dinner, so I'm not sure this is likely to be served on a links golf course in Ireland, but I've gone for Japanese. So kick off with a bit of sushi, and then into a main, which I think I'd go for almost a Japanese surf and turf, so a bit of blackened cod, and then a kind of steak alongside it with some rice. And then I quite like a sort of spicy yuzu based cocktail to go with it. I don't really drink very many cocktails at all, but I do quite like a Japanese cocktail.
Yeah. And if there could be a restaurant pop up, do you have a favorite restaurant like in London or elsewhere around the world that's Japanese that you would just for the day you'd fly the chefs in and they would cook this for you?
That's a good question. I would probably, I wouldn't say I have kind of like a favorite chef when I like always eat at their restaurant. In terms of kind of, TV personalities and stuff, I'd probably go for pretty typical Gordon Ramsay, just because, I do think he's a very good chef. I've eaten at a couple of his restaurants. I do just quite like his kind of dry, grumpy tone as well.
Nice. So well Gordon Ramsay shouting at sushi chefs.
Yeah,
it's happening on your last day. I like that. I'm picturing that really vividly. Sounds good. And then do you have a kind of final event in mind, or in those?
So the final event also has a sort of a big requirement just chucked in. So I'm a big football fan. So I've gone for the FA Cup final. But the prerequisite is that my beloved Southampton Football Club are in it, and obviously win the game as well. So I've seen them once in an FA Cup final and we lost. So it was one of the saddest moments in my life. But my last day on earth, I would hope to reverse that and have one of the happiest days.
I like it. You know, a few of our guests have brought up sports. I think that actually people forget that these big sports occasions are amazing hospitality experiences, right? There's thousands of people trying to make sure everyone has just the best time, from people showing you to your seats and serving you drinks and food to all of that stuff. And a lot of people in the world of events they make their start in these kind of big football stadiums. Do you have who's the great Southampton rivalry that you would be thrashing that day? Is it Portsmouth or someone else in mind?
I was curious. I mean, the typical sort of traditional is Portsmouth, although I'm not kind of one of those who has a huge dislike for Portsmouth. I grew up sort of in between Southampton and Portsmouth, so I don't mind them too much. To be honest, I'd probably prefer if we were just playing one of the classic big teams like a Man United and just hammered one of the big guys. Probably
proper making history kind of team. I like it. Very, very cool. And look, you know, I grew up not far from you on the Isle of Wight, and I've been pretending I like sports for years, but know nothing about football. So is this the current Southampton team, or are we going back to when I was a kid and the Matt Letizia? Are you now doing a kind of I mean, I feel like you've already broken a few of the rules for Lobby Talk, so you might as well just do your own. Fantasy football.
If it's a complete rule break, then I'd go for the mid-90s, just because that team was particularly terrible outside of Letizia. So it would be even more of a dream of kind of the likes of Ian Dowie, Ken Moncal, hammering, maybe like a Man United team from sort of the mid-2000s. So Ronaldo in his prime, just getting undone by some old, slow Southampton players. Yeah. That would be a great day for me.
I can imagine half the people watching probably quite interested. The other half of people are probably just like, I've literally just no idea what this is talking about now. So absolutely fine. But I think there is definitely something about football teams when you're a kid definitely leave their mark more. And you remember football names when you're a kid as well, which you just don't, I think, at the same time as a grown up. Anyway, look, I know nothing about football, so let's move swiftly on. Our last section is called the guest book, and it's definitely my favorite. It's our chance. Like you've worked incredibly hard and you've really built up a fab career in the finance community and in IHG. I'd love you to share some of your thoughts on that journey, and for others who are kind of looking at head office roles, looking at finance, and thinking what would you say to them? What would you say to yourself kind of 11 years ago? Do you think?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's probably a number of things. I'd say. I mean, firstly, having worked kind of in corporate roles all my life, but also in roles that interact with hotels. So sometimes there is almost this slight aura of or someone from sort of corporate. There's a phrase you hear, and the reality is, it's just a bunch of people who happen to work in an office rather than a hotel, and a lot of us actually look at the individuals who work in hotels and go, that is a really tough job. I'm so impressed by those people. And I would find it so hard to do their job. And we just do different things, right? There's no real distinction that's kind of, hotel and corporate. We just do different roles. I mean, the corporate or hotel is just the environment that you work within. And there's a lot of people that switch between the two across their career. And that would ultimately feed into my biggest piece of advice. I mean, per sort of the intro, I've moved between a lot of roles, and I've got a huge amount of value from that. And it's meant I've never been bored, and I've always really enjoyed what I've done. And I always think the most important thing in your career is to never be bored. We spend way too much time at work to ever be clock watching. And if I ever reached that point, I would definitely look to change something. But to be in an environment where you aren't ever bored, you have to kind of always challenge yourself to do different things and not to limit yourself. I would always say, for me, I could turn around and say, I'm a finance professional. I do the finance stuff. The commercial person does the commercial stuff. the reality is my value comes from bringing a more financially oriented perspective, but on anything at all. So I would feel very comfortable giving my opinion on commercial initiatives, on brand initiatives, on HR initiatives, and the value I feel I deliver is that I just bring a diverse view. I just bring a different perspective to other people because of my background, because of my experience, and just because of the way my brain works. And that's where my value is. If I wanted to work in a role that was kind of super technical finance, I could have gone into financial reporting and tax and got kind of deep knowledge. I took the decision very early to kind of be more of a generalist, and that gives me the ability to move around. And I just think too often people almost sort of self-censor and think, this is the area I work in. It's really hard for me to get out of it. And people ask kind of, what do I need to do to move around? Actually, the answer is you sort of need to change your mindset and think about what do I not need to do to not move around. And because naturally, lots of people can do lots of different things. And if you're in a big organization, you build up so much knowledge and experience that sets you apart from others if you do move around, and people hugely value that. I've never known anyone turn around to me and kind of go, oh, I think it's a disadvantage you've done lots of different roles. It's definitely always played to my advantage. So yeah, I just encourage everyone to, challenge themselves and never self-censor. Use your initiative, put yourself out there, and just build networks with people, because it is generally networks and people who will support you and get you into different roles.
Yeah, really helpful. Loads of really interesting stuff to unpick there. I suppose one thing that strikes me is you've got quite a high degree of self-awareness, right? You know where your strengths are, and it sounds like when you're in a room with people from other functions, you know what you've got to offer. What do you think you did to nurture that? If someone's sitting there and they're not particularly confident, or they don't quite know how to talk about the stuff they know and almost package it up either for that next role or for that project they're working on. Was there anything you think you did that started to make you realize, oh, I do have these strengths and they're different perhaps to what other people bring to a project or a conversation?
Yeah, I guess one of the things I would say is I wouldn't be shy of telling people kind of how you operate and how you work. So, when I move into new roles or when I meet new people or new audiences, I'm normally quite quick to say that the way I work is I like to digest and think before I speak about it. So therefore, when I'm sort of in big group meetings, I might not immediately respond, and I might be slightly delayed because I want to kind of think it through first. And that does mean fairly often I'm kind of, referring to something that's happened almost 2 or 3 minutes ago. But I guess I've built the confidence up to do that. But I think almost being upfront with people as to how your mind works and how you operate is key. And that just helps people understand because everybody is different. Secondly, you just ask people for sort of feedback, I think is really important through your career. Anyone who is willing to give you feedback is generally giving it to you because they want to help you. And to an extent, you have to try and desensitize yourself. You know me, James, I'm not a particularly sensitive soul, so it's fine. It's always been fine for me. Some stuff you hear when you ask for feedback will kind of feel like criticism because we're almost trained, anything negative to kind of take it to heart. But that's how you improve, and anything you get is really kind of feedback to help improve you. And you just have to take that on board. And, if lots of people are saying similar things to you, you just focus on trying to improve it. And nobody's perfect. Everyone's got things to improve on. And it's just about picking those things and focusing on them, but never forgetting, here's the stuff that I'm good at. And here's the stuff that I can really bring to the table. And also I've always taken the view that, to an extent, our value of being in any organization is our opinion. And saying something stupid is better than saying nothing, as long as it's not too ridiculous, right? Yeah. And often what you think are the most stupid points or questions are actually the most insightful, or they lead to the most fruitful conversation.
Yeah, and often it's the thing that no one else is saying because they're not sure whether they should. No, I love that, Matt. There's so much to unpick there. We could definitely talk for hours, but I'm really conscious of time. We're committed to try and stick to 30 minutes. I know you've got kind of childcare pickups to do, so we'll unfortunately have to leave it there. But I really appreciate everything you've said. You've made it sound, I think, really straightforward to get started. You know, kind of knowing yourself, working on skills. I think you're really approachable. I hope it's okay if people kind of reach out to you and
sure.
take this further. So for those kind of watching either live or on demand, that's it from now. We kind of reached the checkout, unfortunately. A huge thanks to Matt for sharing his thoughts. We would love to kind of keep improving these events, so please do share your feedback with us. And as Matt says, I am sensitive, but I need that criticism. I need that feedback. Big news from us is Otolo's Christmas party. Matt, I definitely see you there in your Santa hat. Next Thursday, this time, so 5 o'clock UK time, 6 o'clock in Europe, 12 o'clock on Eastern Standard Time. We're going to have some awards. We're going to have a few laughs. I may even dress up as Father Christmas. Who knows? It's not the first time it's happened, but we look forward to seeing you there. Matt, you've been brilliant. Really appreciate your thoughts and all of your contributions to Otolo as a mentor, and keep doing great work you're doing at IHG and supporting teams. So good luck. Thanks for your time.
Cool. Cheers, James. Look forward to you dancing at your Christmas party.
Yeah, well, virtual. I'll be just behind here probably, but no, all good. Cheers, Matt. Stay safe. And stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.